goes. That's kind of how this stuff works. Literally, I would say as close to an example of how the sausage is made, if you catch my drift. It's pretty sad. The longer you work in academia, the longer you recognize that a lot of this is kind of BS. But I can't swear since we're live on YouTube because I'll get demonetized. So anyway, welcome Facebook folks. Welcome Twitter as well. Speaking of the devil. And so yeah, let's get started. We're going to be talking about inflammation, aging, and what you can do with vagus nerve stimulation to literally stop it in its tracks. Wow. But before we do that, we're going to do our simultaneous squeeze. So we're going to take a big deep breath in, like a deep as possible through the mouth. Take a sip of air at the top. You're going to hold it and squeeze it. And then you're going to slowly exhale for 5 more seconds. Okay, ready? So in 3, 2, 1, breathe in. Sip of air at the top. Hold and squeeze. Go. And slowly exhale for 5. Okay, good. Awesome. Very simple to do. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And it is like, I just saw a study that showed that if you put oxygen into your brain, you can learn a lot better and a lot faster. So you're welcome for those people who are lifelong learners. Okay, cool. So let's crack into it. So let's talk about the aging process and VNS. So the aging process is natural to all human cells. As we age, our bodies will undergo various changes that can lead to cellular aging and eventually, but not necessarily, but it will happen, cellular death of whatever type that might be. However, recent research, and what we're going to be posting here in the chat today, so you have reading material for later, has shown the role of the vagus nerve in particular in the aging process, and that this actually may hold a really important key to slowing down and actually reversing the inevitable progression of aging in the body. So this kind of stuff is potentially groundbreaking. As a friend of mine in Hollywood would say, ground blocking, because they misspoke when they said it. We always made fun of them for that. Not a friend of mine, just some stupid producer in Hollywood. It's ground blocking. But anyway, so in terms of when we talk about aging and its relationship to inflammation, we have to understand that that process that drives early onset aging and the onset of chronic diseases, it is inflammation. Chronic inflammation because of issues with the macrophage, right? Inflammation is a process that is a result of your macrophages, which are found in your spleen, by the way, for those who are paying attention. When your macrophages are not receiving signals from the vagus nerve, your macrophages allow a lot of inflammation to be produced, even low grade, at a very constant rate. Now, this constant chronic inflammation has been identified now as the primary driver of aging in the body. It is a normal process of your immune system in its attempt to protect the body from harmful stimuli, such as pathogens or injuries. That is, low-grade inflammation is important to fight against bacteria and to resect damage in the body. If it weren't for some degree of this inflammatory process, you might get a cut and you might die from it, right? So inflammation, when needed at certain times, is the thing keeping you alive. However, most people we see are developing chronic low-grade inflammation all the time. Now, this chronic low-grade inflammation can trigger a cycle that can lead to premature cellular death and cell aging through a process known as apoptosis. So if your cell has an onslaught of even a small amount of inflammation constantly, there's a natural trigger inside of the cell that's called the suicide switch, and that's considered to be called apoptosis. You don't want that to be triggered, but most people are walking around eating a lot of sugar, eating a lot of ultra-processed foods, having a lot of stress, not even attempting to resolve any latent mental issues that they clearly have, and driving low-grade chronic inflammation driven by stress all the time. They are literally killing themselves from the inside out by not dealing with the problem. Now, this accelerated aging can oftentimes result in a wide range of age-related diseases and conditions. This can include cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's and dementia, and even cancer. This can drive the unnecessary development of tumors, cancers that can spread through your body. This kind of stuff is serious and deadly, okay? So I'm going to post in the chat here a little article for you to read as well to better understand this, to better understand the process by which vagus nerve stimulation interacts significantly with the process of aging in the body. I highly encourage you to read that institutional study that I just posted. Now, looking at the kind of expanding on that, let's talk about how is it possible that we can dampen inflammation through vagus nerve stimulation. So, it's very interesting, and it's actually very well known at this point in time that researchers have since discovered that if you stimulate the vagus nerve properly, that you can dampen the inflammatory cycle in the body appropriately. And this works far better if you know about steroids. Steroid usage, prednisone, for instance, or different types of oral or IV steroids can actually can turn off your immune system completely. And that can actually make you more susceptible to infection. But that, again, it's a complex interaction between steroids and inflammation and this whole process. So, when we stimulate the vagus nerve, it modulates the inflammatory cycle in the body. Now, the vagus nerve acts as a major component of your parasympathetic nervous system. And the vagus nerve is responsible for regulating various bodily functions, including digestion, heart rate, and inflammation. So this kind of stuff is really, really crucial in terms of regulating this entire process. So by activating the vagus nerve, we find that the inflammatory response can be modulated, effectively reducing the chronic inflammation and its detrimental effects on the body. So yeah, you heard me right. By simply activating the vagus nerve in the right way, we can turn off this over chronic inflammatory response that's happening, and significantly protect our body from the detrimental effects of what are considered chronic inflammatory damage to the cells, to your genetics, and to your body. So this kind of stuff is important. This is considered the modulation of the inflammatory process. This opens up a ton of new possibilities for, yes, stopping and also slowing down the aging process in the body. Okay? So I'm going to post again here another great article that does point to this. I mean, this article I'm posting is 45 days young. This was posted 45 days ago. The kind of stuff that I'm talking about here, folks, is pretty much state of the art, as it turns out to be, in relationship to aging, longevity, inflammation, vagus nerve stimulation, right? I cover very much like on the cutting edge. So for instance, to brag on myself a little bit, that means for people who are under my tutelage, right? My students, they get access to protocols first in the world as this develops, right? It's very easy to read published research on humans, and then have a very tight-knit audience of friends and inner circle members who I say, hey, give this a try, right? And that's something that I offer to my inner circle. Now, if you want to be in chronic inflammatory states and you think waiting for another 4, 7, maybe 12 more years until it's on CNN, which is funded by Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and Raytheon and weapons manufacturers who want you to be stressed and sick and get you on pills, that's fine. It's not going to make or break me, right? But, just so you know, the stuff that I am talking about is literally on the cutting edge. But it's not just from the cutting edge. This is also based on research that has been published since the early 2000s, right? The work on VNS as an inflammatory process is from the early 2000s, 2001. The year 2000, Dr. Kevin Tracy published this work. So, just recently we celebrated the, multi-year anniversary of, or not celebrated, but mourned maybe, of 9/11, which was September 11th, 2001. The inflammatory process and controlling that through vagus nerve stimulation predates September 11th. So if that feels like an eternity ago, vagus nerve stimulation for treating inflammation and protecting people from death in the case of inflammation is way older, far older than even September 11th, just to give you some reference in terms of age. And we continue to learn more and more and more. So this kind of stuff is coming at a very, pretty substantial and fast rate. So next chapter. So how does this kind of stuff work, right? How does something like vagus nerve stimulation create these longer term, even genetic shifts in the body? How is it possible that we found one single treatment of the branch of the vagus nerve that goes to the pancreas in a human being, on living humans, not rats, not mice, not chimpanzees, on living human beings, done under the Feinstein Institutes in Long Island in New York State, right? You guys know the Feinstein Institutes. That's where Dr. Kevin Tracy works. That's where the inflammatory cycle has been studied for decades in partnership with GE, General Electric, the company that manufactures ultrasound systems, is that they found that applying focused, very advanced protocols, mind you, right? You're not just going to walk into a hospital and say, give me the same protocol that they did at GE and Feinstein's at Northwell Health in New York. You're not going to be able to do that, but I'm just reporting this, is that they found that one single treatment of the vagus nerve that goes to the pancreas, targeted treatment of the vagus nerve in the pancreas. Now, this is not going to be something you're going to do with your little pulsetto or your little Hulist or any of this kind of shit, right? We're talking about pretty established biomedical equipment that can focus stimulation onto the vagus nerve in the abdominal part of the body. It's a really special piece of technology. We'll save that for another video. But one single treatment reversed in a lasting way type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance. Fully blown type 2 diabetes was reversed permanently by a single dose treatment of the vagus nerve in the pancreas. Do you know how expensive type 2 diabetic treatments are? Do you know the asking price of insulin today? It's around $1,600 per month. So imagine walking around with a bill, an extra bill on top of what you already pay, your rent, your food, your electricity, your insurance, whatever, and thinking, if I don't pay to the pharmaceutical business $1,600 for my insulin, that I'm going to die. You're going to pay that amount. But this little outfit, not a little outfit, Northwell Health is a multi-billion-dollar hospital chain. GE is a I think close to a $1 trillion company, did the research that showed that, yes, if you stimulate the vagus nerve in the pancreas, that you can completely cure and reverse type 2 diabetes. I'm holding on that point a little bit because I think it's a pretty big deal, right? And here we are with, a relatively small group, and I get asked, why don't I see this on, why isn't this on CNN? If this is a real thing, why don't I see this on CNN? Why the fuck would they put this on CNN? CNN, do you know who pays the bill of CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News? Look at the commercials that they play. Pharmaceuticals, drugs, Wegovy, semaglutide, Ozempic, Mounjaro. The biggest anti-diabetic drugs that generate billions and billions of dollars, they've still got about 14 years of patents to sell those. They are going to fight tooth and nail for this kind of stuff to ever make it into the mainstream. I promise you that. Did you know? So Eli Lilly, the company that originally produced Ozempic, the anti-diabetic drug that's now being used by celebrities to lose weight. It's a once a week injection. You lose like 20 to 30 pounds. People are having these like miraculous, like, if you've been to a grocery store and you see Star Magazine and it shows like, wow, Jennifer Aniston's miraculous weight loss. How is she doing it? It's probably because she did an Ozempic party. This is something that's common there. So Eli Lilly, I believe they're a company from Denmark. Okay. Little tiny Nordic country, Denmark. They have to publish their annual GDP number. They have to now publish 2 GDP numbers. One that excludes the profits that came solely from the sale of Ozempic, and one that includes the sale of Ozempic. That is how massive the drug, the anti-diabetic drug Ozempic, has been for that country and for that company. Eli Lilly was in the 14th top pharmaceutical by yearly income. They're now the number one. They beat out Pfizer because of this drug. Okay, so if I went back your mind, a little reptilian brain's like, I mean, this guy's talking about some pretty incredible stuff, but why am I not seeing it on mainstream news? Is because mainstream news is funded by Eli Lilly, by Pfizer. Go watch them. Go look at the commercials. They're going to have, good. One monthly dosage of Ozempic is $2,000. Usually not covered by insurance, but sometimes it is. So, okay, we've got about 10 years for this to come into the mainstream. So I'll stick around what I'll do is I'll promise the next decade of talking about this so that when that goes out of patent and they need to make money, that they'll invest in me and I'll be able to go, nah, I was right and you were wrong. So anyway, that's certainly going to happen. But, so let's get back onto the subject here. How does this work, right? How can something like vagus nerve stimulation have lasting changes? Like one treatment can have lasting treatment changes. It's generally speaking going to be because of epigenetic modification that is a result of the type of stimulation that you do. So the type of stimulation that we do can drastically shift what's called the epigenetics. You guys know epigenetics, correct? They used to do DNA, genomic modeling, and they found that there's a bunch of DNA that seems to be necessary, but there's a bunch of DNA that they used to call junk DNA, meaning it seems to be a little bit different. It changes here and there. They just figured it's like protective junk DNA. Turns out your junk DNA can change literally within weeks to months to years. And if you meditate or you eat McDonald's consistently, one or the other, literally that junk DNA will start to shift and your body will start producing inflammation as a result of modifications to your epigenetic code. So when you stimulate your vagus nerve, it's the equivalent of cutting out all junk food, meditating for the last 10 years, and eating a very healthy diet, singing every day and doing karaoke, getting Botox injections in your face. Vagus nerve stimulation is like a powerhouse option for making radical epigenetic changes that reduce inflammation in the body. That's why it can work so well in the pancreas. Because you would think, right, if it was just stimulation of the vagus nerve once, that then you would have to continually do it. But for those people who know me and know the kind of technology that I like to use, just know that the technology they used for the pancreas study was the type of technology that I like to use, that I talk about, that caused a lasting shift, not a temporary shift, right? Electronic stimulation, electrical stimulation of the vagus nerve does not seem to cause this type of epigenetic modification that has the lasting results. Whereas the other type of sound-based stimulation does, okay? So you'll see that in the next post. But generally speaking, dampening the inflammatory cycle that has a lasting impact is going to come from one piece of technology, and that is in shifting of the epigenetic process in the body that drives inflammation. Are you guys learning something here in the chat? Type yes if you're here with me. I want to make sure you guys aren't like drooling with all the information I'm throwing your way. So, or you could be drooling and you could still type yes in the chat. Just let me know that you're here. I need a proof of life check, okay? So type yes in the chat, wherever you are, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Good, awesome. Sarah, good. Hope you're eating this up. This absolutely applies just as much to you as anybody. You must be like, oh my God, I made the right choice here. Fuck yes. Good, Shar, good to see you. Yes, awesome, good. You guys, we are on the cutting edge, and I don't want you to, thank you, TK, good to see you as well. Yeah, we are on the cutting edge, and I don't want you to take like, I don't like to look at metrics as evidence of anything. CNN and MSNBC, they pay to have people view them, and they are paid off by these pharmaceutical companies. But what I'm sharing is cutting edge, and this is pretty cool. You're gonna hear me talk about this a lot more because this is pretty huge. What we've discovered more recently, and I'm talking about like within the last few months, right? I sit on data. I like to digest it before I talk about it publicly, but you should get a sense that this is pretty big. So through vagus nerve stimulation, the epigenetic process, this junk DNA, gets modified, and that slows down the rate of aging. You can actually test this through what I posted a few days ago called the Dunedin PACE blood test, PACE. That's from True Diagnostics, and you can actually do a test and see within 6 weeks of starting VNS an actual shift in your aging markers, which is cool. So this means that incorporating vagus nerve stimulation in general, whatever you choose, right, is a better option than nothing at all. Obviously, there are better forms of VNS than others, but at the end of the day, if this helps you decide once and for all, you know what? I don't want to age fast like my grandparents did. I think I've mentioned this meme. It seems to turn people off. It's meant in good humor. It's a meme, and it's a picture of, it's an old picture from like the year like 1703. It's like an oil painting. And there's a Victorian Baroque woman, white gaunt skin, laying down like this. And there's clearly a physician sitting by her bedside, something you'd see in the Louvre, right? Classic Monet kind of picture, whatever. And, she says, am I dying? And he says, well, everybody's dying. You're just like the Usain Bolt of dying. And what that means that, Usain Bolt is the fastest runner in the world. This girl looked like she's in her probably mid-20s, but aging very fast. So in essence, I know explaining a joke makes it way more funny, but for those who are a little thicker on these things, they might not get it. Like, who's Usain Bolt? I ran track and field in high school, so I was a sprinter. I know who Usain Bolt is. But yes, some people are aging much faster than other people. So if you can make that determination at some point in your life to say, I can't necessarily control if I get hit by a car or if a plane crashes in my house and I die. But I can at least control what I can control. Your vagus nerve is absolutely a place where you do have a regulatory control over your body. So VNS slows down the rate of aging. This means that incorporating vagus nerve stimulation into one's health regimen can potentially be more effective. Now listen carefully. Vagus nerve stimulation can be more effective, potentially, in managing the aging process, even when you compare it to things like anti-aging supplements, expensive anti-aging treatments like metformin or rapamycin, stem cell injections, or IV treatments like glutathione and IV blood treatment and ozone oxygenation, all these kinds of therapies, which any doctor worth their salt is probably going to upsell you on. But based on what we're seeing is that a certain type of vagus nerve stimulation actually is most likely going to take the lead as an anti-aging form of vagus nerve stimulation. So just so y'all know, all right? I gone tell you and I done tell you again. And this won't be the last time that I gonna tell you, all right? So, all right. So getting close to the end here. So incorporating vagus nerve stimulation for healthy aging. What could you do? Now, it is important to evaluate your approach to managing the aging process. And you should be striving for longevity and better health. In our program, in our phase 1 program, for instance, just today, I was assisting a client getting a better sense. She signed up for phase 2. So phase 2, what we do cover is a lot more about the anti-inflammatory longevity diet plan. That's actually where we put you on something called the pro-longevity eating fasting mimicking diet, which is a 5-day fast that includes still eating food, but you do a fasting mimicking process for 5 days. Now, the reason for that is it stimulates a process called autophagy. And autophagy is where your body seeks out tumorous cells and kills them on the spot a lot faster. Most of the time when people are floating in nasty chemicals in their body, they have tumorigenesis cells waiting for that moment to kick in and grow. You right now have in your body tiny seeds of tumors and cancer. And if you don't stimulate the process of autophagy, 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 then those tumor cells just lay dormant. So in phase 2, what we covered is a specific thing developed out of UCLA, which is a 5-day fasting mimicking diet, which generates a powerful process called autophagy. And so what we're doing in that context is really optimizing around longevity, anti-aging, killing tumorous cells, anti-cancer activities, preventing neurodegeneration, preventing cardiac failure, etc. Right? So there's a lot of different steps that we take to kind of layer on processes that are really important. And of course, with that, I'm not even going to go into the kind of technology, but phase 2 does up to a much higher, much more powerful device. You guys know what I'm talking about. So by incorporating vagus nerve stimulation and other corollary compatible forms of vagus nerve stimulation into our health regimen, we can potentially slow down the rate of cellular aging, reduce chronic inflammation, and positively influence epigenetic processes. A lot of this is rewriting some of your epigenetic code so that when you're not stimulating your vagus nerve, that the process maintains, that the anti-inflammatory process sustains itself day after day after day, right? And that's what we see with that treatment of of type 2 diabetes. It's an epigenetic modification that's lasting, that reverses type 2 diabetes, which is pretty incredible. I gotta say, that's pretty darn incredible. But you're not gonna hear anything about it soon because it literally threatens the GDP of a NATO country right now. It's the biggest cash cow for the pharmaceutical industry. You're not, unless you're hearing it from me, you're not going to hear about it. I'm sorry. I'm just sorry to tell you. So anyway, that is the 6 sad truth. Did you guys ever see that show Daria on MTV? They had a segment called 6 Sad World. That was like their news thing. It's kind of interesting. Little black pilled there. But anyway, so in conclusion, while further research is needed to fully understand the mechanisms underlying vagus nerve stimulation and its impact on aging, early findings indicate its promising potential. So if you are striving for a healthier and longer life, make sure to include vagus nerve stimulation in your process of managing your and the aging process. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate you a bunch. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully you're able to do your simultaneous squeeze beforehand because your brain is just like learning a lot. And this will be helpful for you and it will be helpful for your friends. So if you hear through the grapevine, hey, I heard Susan, she's pre-diabetic, I've heard. Send her my way, right? Have her come to our group. We'll work with her. We'll help her out. We can do that protocol, actually, just so you know. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, I am capable of facilitating, okay? So I'm not just saying this for the sake of just saying it to dangle some carrot over your face that's non-existent. I am going to dangle a carrot over your face that exists. But you gotta understand that if you don't set a sense of urgency, that impending doom is coming your way, and that a chronic case of inflammatory disorder is just around the corner. If you don't deal with it, something bad could happen. I get fielded messages from people all the time, and I kind of don't like it, but I deal with it because it's the position in the market that I'm in. But I have a lot of people who reach out to me. They're like, oh my God, something went wrong. I'm only in my 50s and I feel really bad. What can I do? And I say, well, what are your symptoms? And they say, oh, I can't breathe. I don't feel full. I feel dizzy. My stomach doesn't work. I can't digest food. And my emotions are all over the place. But I feel disassociated. What could that be? And they go to a doctor. They go to a psychiatric ward. And their doctor says, well, we ran all the tests and we don't know what's going on. And you look fine to us. And I tell them, this seems like a categorical autonomic dysfunction. This appears to be a vagus nerve issue, actually. And they go, oh my God, you sound like you know more than most of my doctors. And I go, yeah, well, I've been working in the field of neurostimulation for 12 entire years. I have worked in clinic developing with my hand, with my company, with an engineering consultancy firm, ultrasound systems to stimulate the human brain and body. So I've dealt with the science behind how do you modulate neural activity in the body. And so I do see the brain and the body and the vagus nerve through this lens of, it's a mechanical, biochemical, material, physical, quantum system. It's a process. Your whole body is interconnected. And that if you see issues, that you're not going to be able to do a blood test for every single disorder. Some of the disorders of your body can be so small and deep and so pathological and so massive that a doctor can miss it. But we don't see that. My training comes from some of the greatest thinkers in terms of the realm of neuroscience and consciousness on the planet. Go look up Stuart Hameroff, PhD, Dr. Stuart Hameroff from the University of Arizona, Tucson. He's my advisor. He taught me not everything I knew, but a lot about consciousness and how the brain works and how neuroscience works. He's a world-renowned publisher on this field. Not a woo-woo guy, not a fringe guy. He's like one of the best like anesthesiologists on the planet. He's so ahead of the curve that it's insane. Most academics still today are like, there's no way this could be right. And he keeps getting proved right again and again and again. And people don't take kindly to that. They try to kind of ignore him. So, again, if you think by trying to ignore this, it's going to do anything, you've got another thing coming. I come from a long line of thinkers who are decades ahead of their time, who just continually show up and are proven to be right. Boom. So, hey, there you go. Yes. So thank you, Shar. Yes, Shar writes, I will share this. Yes, you do know more than any doctors I've ever been treated by. Yeah, because I see a different model upon which this system is working. Again, your model matters. The framework upon which you see how the body works matters quite a lot, actually, in terms of what you can do. And also, very few doctors work between neuroscience and work in engineering and biomedical science and psychology and normal standard practice of medicine. I have domains in every one of these areas to a pretty hardcore degree. I've literally worked in different spaces pretty significantly for over 12 years. I'm only in my 30s. Most of my advisors were already in their 50s by the time I came in, right? So 40s and 50s, right? And I have colleagues who are crushing it right now. So yeah, I mean, the field it's not going anywhere fast. So anyway, but cool. Well, hey, I hear in the background that a beloved family member has just arrived home, and I am so excited to see them. They've been away for quite a while. So I'm going to wrap up the video today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. Stimulate your vagus nerve. If you took anything from this, stimulate your dang God vagus nerve as soon as you freaking can. What are you waiting for? I don't get it, right? If you're waiting for God to come and say to stimulate your vagus nerve, you are doing it completely wrong. It's dumb to be waiting that long, okay? All right, so cool, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Much love. God bless. All that fun stuff. And I will see you guys on the flip side. I'll see you again tomorrow. Take care.